Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Sacred Soul Shift series. I'm your host, Vanessa, your trusted soul navigator and energy alchemist. In this series, we'll embark on soul-stirring adventures through the realms of intuition and self-healing with women across all modalities, where ancient wisdom and modern insights intertwine. So if you're tired of the scripted routine and ready for healing and growth, my kindred spirit, this series is crafted just for you. It's time for your Sacred Soul Shift. So I have with me here Vanessa Nixon. She is a herbalist and a naturopath, and she is here to share her wonderful wisdom about the herbal world with us, a topic that was one of the first topics I dived into when I started shifting into spiritual practice and learning to be a natural spiritual healer, which is very exciting for me to talk about. So I can't wait for her to come in and share her wisdom, particularly because she works with a lot of older women, which is past my experience. I'm still quite young, so I'm hoping to help and shed some light on this information for the older ladies in this group. And obviously I'm going to be there one day, so I would love to learn about this topic. I'll just introduce her with her little bio for you all. You know how lots of women in midlife start experiencing symptoms such as hot flushes, brain fog, insomnia, weight gain, and intimacy issues that keep them from living their best lives? Well, Vanessa helps empower them to reduce menopausal symptoms using natural methods and learn how to make this the most impactful phase of their lives. I love that. While feeling healthy, vibrant, and focused, which can be quite difficult once you reach that age. As a traditional naturopath, CEO of a natural cosmetics company, which I find really exciting, and I am going to talk to you about that. She is a professional belly dance instructor, which is exciting as well. She loves helping to empower women to thrive during the spiritual initiation of their menopausal journey through natural health, movement, and beauty. She started this new phase of her life at the age of 50, and by stepping powerfully into vibrant health, she now helps others. I'm going to bring her into the feed here. Welcome to our event here in Sacred Soul Shift. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to speak with you today.
It's very exciting. A lot of the ladies in our group are older than me. I'm a bit of an old soul, so I tend to attract into a lot of older, kind of wise women, which I feel is beautiful, and I love being surrounded by an older generation, but it does leave a bit of a gap in my knowledge base, obviously, because I haven't actually got to that stage in life. So I'm really excited to be able to share information that can help the ladies in this group and empower them on their journey with information that I don't actually know myself, which is really exciting.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. And I'm passionate about helping to empower women throughout their lives, but especially through this transition of menopause, because I really feel that it can be such a powerful time for women. And unfortunately, in our Western societies, we don't really support women through this period of our lives. And menopause is still kind of a taboo subject. It used to be in generations and centuries past that, when our societies were a little bit more community oriented and more village like, that the elder women of the village would help mentor the women as they go through the various stages of life. But we don't really have that anymore. And so until the last, maybe 10 years or so, it's really been a taboo subject. And so a lot of us are really feeling alone and feeling like we don't have the resources that we need to navigate this transition joyfully and with ease and vitality and health. So that's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I really understand that from my perspective as well, because obviously I haven't reached that stage, and yet it's still something that's not talked about. So I don't even understand what's going on. And even coming from, the daughter of a mother as well, like, it's still a shushed subject, even though she's experienced it and I've known she's experienced it, but it's still been hidden from me. And I feel like the world still hides a lot of information, and I feel like it should be expressed, as part of the spiritual journey. As women shift from girls into puberty, that's still kind of frowned upon to talk about as well. And then, as we step into womanhood and then step into the crone, and, each stage I think should be celebrated, and it should be, as you talk about this spiritual and empowering experience, but it is kind of hidden from us in a way where it's not talked about even by the people that are experiencing it. I see and I hear and I feel the way people talk about it as kind of a bit shameful, really, the people that are going through it. Like they try and hide it from, and the way they talk about it is kind of in a sarcastic manner, and like they want to make humor out of it, kind of to, I feel, to shift the shame of going through, that phase of their life. Is that something that you see?
I'm glad you said that, because I think that there is still a lot of shame around this period of a woman's life. And I think part of it is because of the conditioning of our society. Youthful beauty is what it's all about. And many of us understand that, there are many different kinds of beauty, but that's not what we're conditioned to believe. And so as we mature as women, our bodies change, and, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we go through shifts and changes all through our lives. But as we are becoming more mature, a lot of those changes are becoming more obvious, more apparent. And there is some shame in that, because for all of our lives, we've been taught that beauty is youthful. Beauty is, it's young, it's fresh, it's smooth. So as our skin changes, as we start to get wrinkles, as we have other changes in our body that maybe we weren't prepared for, there is shame around that, unfortunately. And because it's not talked about, and because it's not celebrated, this stage of womanhood is not celebrated, I think that there is a lot of hiding, and there's a lot of sarcasm, and there's a lot of deflecting. It's taboo, as I mentioned, to talk about how our bodies change and how those changes are actually positive. They're actually changes that are happening for us and not just to us. And that's a concept that is definitely not brought up in our society very often. How could these changes be for us? How could they be positive when so many of them seem to be framed by our medical association as and our medical organizations as illness or disease? Menopause is actually framed as an illness, a disease. It's a deficiency disease, technically, in conventional medicine. And so it is very difficult for us to feel really wonderful and positive about this time of our lives when we are hearing these misconceptions from the time that we're young.
It's crazy, isn't it, that they consider it a medical deficiency, even though every single female is going to go through that stage at one point or another. It's not a medical issue, it's life. Is it hidden, or do you just not ask questions about it? Which is true, because as a younger person, I feel it's hidden from me as well, and I don't feel safe to ask questions, because even experiencing it from my mother and maybe my grandmother at one stage, that it's not talked about in my family particular, and she's saying she's always here to share information with me, which is beautiful. But just in my family boundary, I guess it's something that's not talked about, and I've never felt safe to ask my mother questions about it. It's always kind of, when she's experiencing hot flushes, I'm hot flushing, and it'll be a joke, and then it's immediately shut down. So there's no room there to experience and ask questions and talk about it openly, because I feel like it is something shameful in my family, and it's something that shouldn't be talked about. It's just something that happens.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think another reason for that is that our society has also conditioned us to think that once we are in that menopausal phase of life, that is a sign that we're over the hill. It's all over now. It's going to be downhill from here. And the best years of your life are now behind you. And, who wants to be talking about that? If that's truly the case, of course, we don't want to be talking about how, okay, well, the best years of my life are behind me. But that's another one of these misconceptions. For so many women, these are the best years of their lives. And we have some studies coming out lately showing that the most productive years of life are between the years of 50 and 80. And so, we're finally starting to see more positive studies, more positive information, and a little bit more education coming out now. So I'm really glad to hear that, because I think that one of the reasons that this time of life is so powerful and can be the most powerful and impactful for so many women is because we have already gone through the phase of life where perhaps we've had children, perhaps we've had a career, and perhaps maybe we're empty nesters now, or maybe we are getting ready to start a new business or a new creative project, but we have so much experience and so much wisdom that we've gained over our lives. And now, for the first time, for some of us, we have the space and the time and the energy to focus on ourselves and to focus on what we want to bring into the world. Many women at this time of life are taking this opportunity to really get to know who we are, when previously we may have never had the time to delve deeply into that and really look and connect into our intuition and into our inner wisdom and our inner healers that I believe we all have. And this is a really potent time for us where we can do that. And then we can bring our gifts and our talents and our wisdom out into the world. And some cultures actually call this a time of rebirth. In traditional Chinese medicine, they refer to the menopausal phase as the second spring. And I really love that notion that this is the second spring of our lives. And it's part of that cycle of death and rebirth, because there is this component of this being the end of our reproductive years. And so that is kind of a death in a way. And I think that we need to mourn that. There can be some grief, especially if we were wanting to have children and didn't, or wanting to have more children. It is the end of one cycle, but it's the rebirth of another cycle. And whether we had children or not, whether we still have all of our reproductive organs or not at this point in life, we still have this creative energy as women in our womb space that no longer goes into creating children, but it's still there. And we can use that creative energy to birth new projects, to birth new relationships, new communities, new businesses. And so this is what I love about this period of life, is that it really is a chance to rebirth ourselves into the next half of our lives as what we truly are here to be and do.
I love that. I love the second spring analogy. That's really cool. And Susan says she's 63 and having the best time of her life ever. Thank you, Menopause. And she's loving the freedom. If we could just talk about now a bit of your history and how you became the person you are today. I'd really love to hear your story, considering you didn't start this phase of your life until you were 50. Was it exactly 50 that you decided to change everything?
Well, I went through a period of time between 49 and 51 where I had some major transitions in my life, and I have found that so many women have a very similar story. So I went through menopause. I went through a divorce after 20 years of marriage, became a single mom, moved to a new town, bought my first house on my own, started dating for the first time really in my life, and really started focusing on my career as two of my three daughters, were moving out. And so I had much more time to focus on myself. And so all of these things happened at the same time during my menopausal journey. And it was very intense. And when I look back on it, I realize that I actually was able to come through this period of my life fairly easily. And definitely it was intense and there were lots of challenges. But when I look back, I realized that my own healing journey began in my early 20s. And so I've had, 3 decades that I've really been working on my health. I've been working on my nutrition and using herbal medicine and homeopathy and so many different modalities to get to a place where I felt like I was really at optimal health. And so I came into all of these transitions from a place of wellness. And what I see around me is so many women going through the same types of transitions and changes and really intense experiences, but they're not coming into it at the same level of health. And so they're truly experiencing a lot of struggle, physically, emotionally, mentally, and they don't have the support. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about all women reaching out and educating themselves or working with somebody who can support them so that they're they don't feel so lost, they don't feel so alone, and they don't have so many struggles. And they get to the point where they can really utilize these opportunities that are coming up at this time in their lives instead of struggling through symptoms.
All that experience has led you to be able to use it in a way that's helping so many other women. I love when our journeys kind of coincide with something that we may not have thought when we started, right? It just kind of unfolds for us.
Exactly. Yeah, my healing journey started in my early 20s because I had been experiencing chronic illness for about 6 years, and I grew up in a conventional medical model. My mother was a nurse, and so every time I got sick, I was prescribed antibiotics, and it just became a downward cycle where I was getting sick, every couple of months, and it would take a good 6 to 8 weeks to recover. And so really I was sick all the time. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and a friend asked me why I was on antibiotics all the time. And I told the story. And then he asked me a question that nobody had ever asked me before. And this was really, I think, the beginning of what opened my mind to other possibilities with health in general. He said, well, is it helping? Nobody had asked me that before. For, years and years and years, nobody had asked me if this treatment protocol was actually helping. And I realized it was not helping. And so that opened my mind to the possibilities. Well, if this isn't helping, maybe there's something else that will. And my friend introduced me to an herbalist. And then next time I got sick, which was just a couple of weeks later, I went to this herbalist who gave me an herbal formula for respiratory issues, which is what I had been chronically ill with. And instead of taking 8 weeks to recover, I recovered in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was just such an amazing difference that I was hooked right then and there. And I started studying herbalism and nutritional healing and homeopathy and flower essences and aromatherapy and all of these different modalities so that I could heal myself. And then I was able to then to be able to turn that around and help my clients as well.
Love that. And I do love herbal remedies. I'm such a nature person. I just love being out in nature. And there was a point in my spiritual journey where I was so obsessed with herbs and, plant medicine and all the beautiful things. Just love it. If we could spend a little time now talking about herbal adaptogens to support women that may be on a menopausal journey or premenopausal or postmenopausal, what that looks like for someone on that journey.
Sure, yes. Adaptogens are a category of herbs that help the body adapt to stress. And they do that through the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And they can be a wonderful protocol for a woman in any stage of life who is dealing with a lot of stress. And one of the reasons it's so appropriate for women during their menopausal journey is because, we're all fairly aware that one of the things that happens during this time of our lives is that our reproductive hormones start to shift and start to decrease. And that's not a problem because that's what they're supposed to do. We have higher levels during our reproductive years for reproduction. And once we come out of that reproductive phase, we no longer need high levels of some of those reproductive hormones. And so the problem is that when we have a lot of stress, it affects our cortisol levels. And as most of us may know, cortisol is known as the stress hormone. So when we're under a lot of stress, which happens, as I described through my journey of menopause, I was under a tremendous amount of stress. And when things are changing in our bodies, that creates stress. So we have external stress and we have internal stress. And so our cortisol levels can be really high. And when that happens, because cortisol is one of our major hormones, the reproductive hormones are minor hormones. So whatever's happening with the cortisol is going to affect all of the other hormones. So what is really critical to focus on is making sure that we address our stress and we address our cortisol. And we can do that through herbal adaptogens. And so what they do is they're herbs that you can take on a long-term basis. You can take them for months. And they work with your body so that your body can adapt to the stress load that you have and work with it more efficiently and balance our cortisol so that there will be a trickle-down effect and the rest of our hormones will also balance. And so that's kind of just a high-level overview of why adaptogens are so important during this time of life.
Yeah, and it's crazy what stress does to the body. It affects everything and it makes us sick in so many ways, especially if you're trying to deal with one thing and then stress comes up and it adds to it. Something else happens and triggers something else. It's a really powerful hormone in the body when you talk about cortisol. What type of herbs or forms of herbs do you like working with? Do you like working with them in plant form, like tablets or tinctures, or how do you use them in your practice? I know you talked about herbal essences and all the things that you were learning, but how do you like to work with them now?
So there are several different ways that I like to work with herbs, and there are many ways that somebody can work with them. I prefer to work with them in as whole a form as possible. And so usually that is through teas. It can also be through tinctures. And I have to just say that while I shouldn't say I don't, herbal capsules and tablets are not at the top of my list. as far as a form to take herbs in. However, I have to acknowledge that when I was in my early 20s and didn't know anything about herbs, and I went to this herbalist for the first time, the formula she gave me was in herbal capsules. And I had such a wonderful result. So even herbal capsules, which generally are not very potent because they've been powdered and sitting on the shelf, usually for years by the time it gets to you, still are very, very powerful form of natural medicine. So, and I find that it's an easy way for people to get into herbs who may be used to more conventional medicine and used to taking capsules. That's a great way for people to be introduced to herbal medicine because it's easy and convenient. But most of the time, I make my own remedies. I tincture my own formulas. I put together my own teas, and that's the way I prefer to work with herbs. And I also love to teach people how to grow their own herbs and how to make their own medicine, because I think that component of imbuing your remedies with your own energy is a really wonderful way to heal yourself. And if you grow your own herbs, then you also have this reciprocity where you are taking care of the plants and then they take care of you. And so I think that's just a really beautiful way to heal yourself and also, help to heal the planet.
I love that. And I leads into my next question. For start off, how big is your herbal garden? I'm just picturing you in a little cottage just surrounded by a beautiful food forest or herbal atmosphere. And I just picture you with like a big cupboard of stored dried herbs and tinctures.
Well,
let me into your home. What does it look like?
A huge herbal apothecary off of my kitchen. My daughters, who are now grown, but one of them is still living at home with me. They call it my witch cupboard.
I love that.
It's just full of hundreds of glass jars full of tinctures and dried herbs. And so I do definitely have that. And for many years, I lived in an old farmhouse on 5 acres. And I had a huge herb garden and orchard. And it was basically what you just described was, just had this beautiful food forest and, medicinal garden surrounding. And I have since moved into the city. And I have a very small yard, just a little postage stamp yard, but it is full of herbs. And one of the things about my herb garden is that it is never neat and tidy, because the weeds, I feel, are the most beneficial plants that there are. So there's, dandelions all over the place, and there's chickweed and yellow dock and burdock and all of these wild weeds. Most people pull out of their gardens and yards, and those are the things that I want growing in my garden.
Yeah, I love that. That's my dream. I was living in kind of a suburbia with a small garden, and I was on my way to growing a food forest. But now I just picture myself, crazy big in a rainforest surrounded by, like, as you said, a big orchard and a big herb garden. That's my dream that I'm envisioning and bringing into my life in the next 5 years, was to go big or go home. Oh, go big at home, I should say. If you could just enlighten us, talking about creating our own medicine chest and what sort of things to bring into our own lives that are going to help us on this journey.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, so going back to the adaptogens, there are a lot of different adaptogens that can be really helpful for this time of life. And one of the ones that I use a lot with my clients is milky oats. And this is the green tops of the oat plant before they have matured, and they have this milky substance in the tops of the plants. And this is a really wonderful adaptogen that not only helps the body deal with stress, but it can actually rebuild the nervous system. The myelin sheath that covers our nerves a lot of times gets frayed when we have a lot of stress. And that can, if that goes on, that can lead to, disease states. And that's one of the things that happens in MS, which is an autoimmune illness. And milky oats can actually rebuild the myelin sheath. And so it's very, very soothing to the entire nervous system, and the whole endocrine system can benefit from this. The other part of the oat plant is oat straw, which is just the stalk of the oat plant. And that in itself, I don't consider it necessarily an adaptogen because it is not quite as potent as the milky oats, but it is quite good for the entire nervous system. And then just eating oats.
Yeah. I love oats.
Is
stable.
Yes, really, really wonderful for your nervous system and for calming down that heightened state that we often get into when our nervous systems are on all the time and we're either feeling anxiety on one side or depression on the other. And those mood swings that we can experience, especially in perimenopause, but really at any time of our lives. So that's one of the herbal adaptogens that I really love. And there's many of them, and it depends on your unique situation as to which one's going to be most adapted to you. But holy basil or tulsi is another one. And a lot of the medicinal mushrooms like reishi and shiitake are also adaptogens, as well as nettle seed. So stinging nettle is a plant that is one of my closest plant allies. I love it for so many reasons, and I love using stinging nettle leaf, which is what most people use off of the nettle plant. But if you harvest the seeds in the fall, the seeds are an adrenal trophorestorative, and so that's is the same word that I was describing with milky oats being able to rebuild the nervous system. Nettle seeds does the same thing for the adrenals. It actually rebuilds, and trophorestorative is the word that means an herb that can actually rebuild an organ or a tissue of the body. And so nettle seeds can be really, really beneficial because of all of this stress and cortisol. Our adrenals at this time of life can really become fatigued and overused. And, we've all kind of heard of adrenal exhaustion and adrenal fatigue, and it's kind of become one of those things that's almost epidemic sometimes. And so nettle seed can address that, and it can help just, not only address the symptoms you might be experiencing from adrenals that are overworked, but it can actually help rebuild them.
It's all rebuilding from the inside out. It's powerful stuff. Our plant kingdom. And how often is that something that people should be like daily consuming or weekly consuming, or is it all completely based on each person individually?
It really is more individual. I don't like to put a lot of specifics out there because every person has different needs and unique circumstances. But generally, when you are taking an adaptogen, you're going to want to do that over a period of months. It's not a quick fix. It's not a silver bullet, but it's something that's going to nourish you, as you said, from the inside out. And so you're going to have to be consistent with that for at least a couple of months to see, the results on your health.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the difference between natural medicine and pharma, is they want quick fixes that don't necessarily fix the problem. Whereas natural medicine over time, fixes the problem at its source and repairs and rebuilds rather than just killing whatever's in the system. I love that.
Right, exactly. And I think that there's, in conventional medicine, there is this this way that we view the body as very compartmentalized. It's very separate. And with natural medicine, it's very holistic. And we acknowledge that everything is connected to everything else. And so if something's going on with one part of your body, that means that you need to deal with the whole body and not just compartmentalize it and put a Band-Aid on it, which is what a lot of conventional medicine does. And I'm not against conventional medicine. I think that there's definitely a time and a place for it, but especially when we're dealing with prevention and we're dealing with chronic situations, holistic medicine really excels there.
Yeah, love that. Such a beautiful journey into the plant world, and it's never ending. Every plant has its medicine and its story that it can share with us.
Absolutely.
Love it. Now, can I shift into belly dancing? Because belly dancing, completely change of topic, but when you said you're a belly dance instructor, I was like, oh my God. I've always wanted to learn belly dance, and there's been a few times that I've YouTubed it because I'm an avid YouTuber of working out at home and doing crazy things on YouTube. Tell me about belly dance. And you are an instructor, so is that like a classes that you teach? Is it a program? Or tell me about belly dancing, because I love it.
Right. I love talking about belly dancing. So I actually found belly dance at around the same time that I found herbal medicine when I was healing myself. And so that's part of that same story. I had always been a dancer from the time I was very young. About 5 years old, I started doing tap and jazz, and I did some Latin dancing when I was a teenager. But I had always wanted to learn how to belly dance. I'm not sure why, but there was always this fascination for me. And so when I was about 20 years old, I found a local belly dance class. And I was a very, very shy, modest young woman. I was painfully shy as a child and young adult. And so when I went into my first belly dance classes, I remember I would wear like 3 layers of clothing. Not because I had a poor body image or anything like that. It's just I was very modest and very shy, and I didn't want to be noticed. And after about 6 months, one of my classmates suddenly looked at me and she said, Vanessa, do you remember what you used to wear to class? And I thought about all of these layers that I used to wear. And she goes, look at yourself in the mirror. And I realized I was wearing just like a little bra top and little bike shorts or something, and like, total skin, I was wearing the skimpiest thing that I probably ever worn in my life. And it was just like, and I felt so comfortable. And what I realized in that moment was that belly dancing is not just a really fun, cool form of dance, but it really is a form of women's empowerment. And there's something about belly dance that most women don't know, especially if they're, living in our Western society. And that is that, it's a Middle Eastern cultural traditional dance that was performed only by women, only for women. And the dance itself tells the story of womanhood. And so everything about belly dance is about women, and the moves themselves were created to help a woman's body go through the transitions that her body has to go through throughout her life. So everything is about supporting women. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing. And, traditionally, women would have these celebrations where, just the women of the village would be together, and the men had their own celebrations and they had their own dances that they did. But this was just for women, and the elders in that community would be teaching the young women the moves that they could do to help their bodies go through first menarche and through pregnancy and postpartum and into menopause. And they would perform for each other. And it was just a really beautiful community supportive tradition. And so as I learned belly dance and I learned this dance form, I felt a sense of empowerment within myself that I had never felt before as a young woman, coming of age and then going through my pregnancies and postpartum period and then into menopause. I felt supported. I felt that my body was supported in a really wonderful way. And as I became an instructor and started teaching other women, I've seen the same journey with my students. They come into class and they don't even want to look at themselves in the mirror. They don't like their bodies. They're not in touch with their bodies. And through the isolation exercises, you have to get in touch with your body. That's part of learning this form of dance, is learning how to move the different muscle groups. And women will say, I didn't even know I had that part of my body. I didn't even know I had a muscle there. How do you move that way? And as they start being able to do these things with their bodies that they were never able to do before, they get in touch with a part of themselves that they were never able to know before. And they become more intuitive and they just become more empowered as women. And they start loving to look at themselves in the mirror and they start loving their bodies in a way that they never did before. And that's beautiful to see. And I'm so grateful and honored that I get to be part of that process. And I used to do that in all of my classes were in person, but throughout the pandemic, I've transitioned to teaching classes online, and I've realized that even though I love being in a room full of women and sharing this beautiful art form, we still are able to do that virtually and get so much of the same benefit. And and then we get some extra benefits, like we get to do it out of our homes and we don't have to travel. Yeah. And so yes, I do have weekly classes that I do online, and I love being able to share that this is a body positive form of dance, which a lot of forms of dance just aren't. Or historically have not been. Any woman, any age, any body type, any shape, size can belly dance. And it's not only really healthy for you physically, but also emotionally and mentally and spiritually. It just supports every part of who you are as a woman.
I love that. And I didn't know the history that it was a dance for women. That's amazing. Yeah. And it's beautiful that people, or women, would dance for other women. That doesn't happen nowadays.
No, it doesn't. And most people don't realize that, because once belly dance came over to the United States and other Western societies, it was, we didn't understand what it was. And it was kind of viewed more as, oh, that's exotic dancing. It's more sexual. And, belly dance is very sensual, and it can be a sexual dance if you want it to be. But actually, a belly dance, a traditional belly dance, tells the story of womanhood. The first part of the belly dance has faster music and faster paced movements, and it represents childhood and coming of age. And then the middle part of the dance, the music slows down, and you have a lot of hip movements, and sometimes you even have some floor work, and that represents womanhood and motherhood and giving birth. And then the last part of the dance speeds up again, and you have much more lively movements. And that is the celebration of being an elder. And so the actual dance tells the whole story of womanhood. And it's a gorgeous way to celebrate being a woman.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
And I'm definitely going to check out your classes because it's something that I've wanted to do for so long and I just haven't started. Really, there's no excuse. I just haven't started.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a practice that piqued my interest, and maybe it's the underlying message that you just shared with us why it was drawn to me. And I've always had it in the back of my mind. It's just not something that I have never, gone, okay, I'm going to do that this week. Dive into that. Tell us about your natural cosmetics, because that was something else. I was like, oh, she does that as well. You do all the things.
Yeah, well, that's, I was going to say is I have these 3 branches of my business: the natural health, the natural movement, but then also the natural beauty. And I think that all 3 of those things weave together to create a really strong foundation for wellness for women. My natural cosmetics company came into being because when I trained formally as an herbalist in my early to mid 20s, I was not feeling ready to be responsible for other people's health, but I had all of this newfound knowledge and I wanted to use it. And so I created a business crafting herbal soaps and selling it at the local farmers market. And then I got into body care products and then skincare products and facial care products. And I sold at the farmers market in Vancouver, Washington for about 9 years. And I had built up a pretty loyal clientele. And I started noticing in the last couple of years that lots of the women were asking me about natural makeup. They said, you've got all the other products and we love them, but we can't find any completely natural, healthy makeup. And so I took a year to just spend on research and development because at that time there just really were not very many truly healthy, all natural makeup lines. And what I came up with was this line of all natural mineral makeup. And I sourced my ingredients really carefully. I did a lot of research on what to include and what not to include to make sure that it was really simple, really pure, and really healthy. And when I debuted the line of mineral makeup, within a few months, it became like 90% of my sales. And so I took that opportunity to just streamline my products and just focus on the color cosmetics. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. And it's been about 20 years that I've had that line. And it was really developed for people who have very sensitive skin and can't use conventional makeup, as well as people who just really want to live a healthy, natural lifestyle. And they are very conscious of not only what they put in their bodies, but what they put on their bodies as well. So that's
amazing.
That's the story of that part of my business.
Yeah, which is so true, because there's so much in makeup that we don't know about. I found out maybe 5 years ago I had a really bad allergic reaction to something. I still don't know what it was, but I found out the thing that I'm allergic to is in pretty much everything. It's like a binding, it's a sticky ingredient, and it's found in paint, cement, fireworks, and laundry detergent, makeup. So can you imagine the chemicals that are going into all these other things are also in what we're putting on our face and our eyes even. Like, it's crazy what goes into makeup that we don't know about. And it can say, all natural, but it doesn't have to be 100% organic, which is insane. But it's so beautiful that you've created this. And I create a lot of my personal products, like face oils and toners and that sort of thing. I have bought along my lifetime quite a few, natural / organic makeup products. I don't know. I don't remember the brands, so I can't brand anyone. But I found a lot of the makeup in that aren't good, probably created by men. But like the colors, as you said, you're into the colors. The colors aren't, and the coverage isn't great when you shift into start getting into organic makeups and that sort of thing. So it's really good that it's coming from a woman and you are, looking at these things as well as being organic ingredients.
Right. And I just want to make one thing kind of clear, which most people don't think about. But so my line is an all mineral line. And the reason that I decided on that was because if you include any sort of oils or plant products in your cosmetics, they're going to need a preservative, because
that's where the chemicals come in.
Bacteria or fungi, and they will go bad. And so that's one of the things that I really spent a lot of time on, was trying to find an all natural preservative. And at that time, there were not any that I was that I felt satisfied with, that could actually either work well or truly were natural. Most of the natural preservatives were so highly processed that they were just basically turned into chemicals. And so what I found was that because minerals are inorganic, that means they cannot harbor bacteria or fungi. They don't go bad, and they don't need preservatives. They have an indefinite shelf life. So as long as you don't contaminate the container by putting water or something else in it, it will last forever. And that was something that was really important to me, was that I was able to offer a product that didn't have chemical preservatives, didn't have additives, didn't have fillers, didn't have binders, didn't have any of those extra ingredients, and just had the minerals. And even with minerals, I had to source them really carefully, because a lot of people who have mineral makeup companies are using minerals that are coated with synthetic dyes and chemical, lakes and FD&C colorants and things like that. So, I had to, I went to that further step of making sure that the minerals had no coatings that were not completely natural.
Yeah. It's crazy what companies will do, and then I bet those companies still say it's all natural, right?
Oh, of course.
Always loopholes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that little bit of info with us. And it's important to know what goes on your skin, right? Because what goes on your skin, it's our biggest organ in the body, and it's going into our body pretty much.
Absolutely.
So sorry about that little jump around. What's your message? To bringing together those three components, the beauty and the movement and the healing and all that together as one?
I think that part of that journey for me is what I want to be able to provide for other women, is understanding that you have the ability to heal yourself through natural health, through natural movement, through natural beauty, or whatever else is really, really the thing that moves the needle for you. But I believe that when we are able to get in touch with our inner wisdom and our intuition, then we are able to take ownership of our own health. And I think that's something that in generations past, we all had the knowledge for how to be healthy, how to keep ourselves and our families healthy. And, we've kind of lost that. But I think we all have that ancestral knowledge. It's still there, and we can tap into it through some of these natural modalities. And so that's what I want to be able to offer women, is the confidence and the clarity to be their own healers, and to understand that as women, part of our feminine nature is nurturing each other, supporting each other, and being in community. And that's something that is really important for us as women, is to offer that mentorship and that assistance and that support to each other, so that we can all navigate through these phases of life with joy and vitality and elevated health.
Love that. And it's so important, and it's part of the message that I share as well, that women should be supporting women. I think when we're brought up, it becomes this competition game where we're always competing against each other, but everyone has their own message and their own story to share to help someone else. That's why I love bringing these events to life. Apart from last week's event, it was a man, but the rest of the guests that I'm bringing in are women, and they all have different topics and they all have things and wisdom to share. And I just love that you're a part of this and just raising women up. And exactly what you said, women have the power to heal themselves, and that's part of my message, just giving them the tools, the strategies, the mindset shifts to realize that and empower themselves from the inside out, which is so beautiful.
I love that you have this space to do that, and so I think that's a wonderful way for us as women to help elevate each other. So thank you for what you do.
That's okay. Thank you so much for being here. And your business is Herbs of Grace Healing Arts, which I find really remarkable as well, because my middle name is Grace.
Oh, wonderful.
So the Vanessa and the Grace happening. And your Facebook group is You Can Feel Marvelous in Midlife Naturally. So I'll share that as well above if anyone else wants to join your group as well. Thank you so much for being in this space and sharing your wonderful story with us today. I'm sure everyone appreciates it.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was a delightful talk, and I'm honored to be part of your group.
Thank you so much. See you later.
Thank you, dear souls, for joining me on this sacred journey. If you enjoyed this soul-nourishing experience, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you can stay connected and never miss a moment of our soulful exploration. Let's keep this transformative conversation going in the comments below. Share your insights, your dreams, and the magical moments you encounter. This is a community of like-minded souls, and your voice matters. If you're feeling called to dive even deeper into the realms of intuition and soulful living, remember that I'm here for you. Reach out to me through the links in the description. Let's embark on a personalized adventure to help you create the life of your dreams. This is Vanessa signing off from the Sacred Soul Shift series. Stay enchanted and keep shining bright.